Hello there and welcome to Network Africa with me, Cynthia Are. Now we're looking at security issues and also environmental issues today, but of course we'll start with security. Now if you're still speculating who has the upper hand in the Boko Haram situation, and by that I mean the collaborative efforts of the African countries affected or the insurgents themselves, then allow us to give you a clear understanding. Now, just last week, the Nigerian president, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, confirmed that the military has the upper hand, and that was also confirmed, particularly when the Director of Defense Information, Major General Chris Olukolade, confirmed that the military has retaken 2 key towns once held by the insurgents. Now, this week, the president of Chad, who you can see on your screen right now, that's Idris Deby, has gone as far as saying that he knows the whereabouts of Abubakar Shekau and has threatened him to either surrender or risk being killed. In his words, Abubakar Shekau must surrender. We know where he is, and if he doesn't give himself up, he will suffer the same fate as his compatriots. That's what he said during a news conference after a regional meeting. Now, Chad's army has waged a series of battles against Boko Haram as part of a cross-border military campaign and has retaken territory the militant group held in northeastern Nigeria in the former. Now, speaking of Chad, a dawn attack by Chadian troops has cleared Boko Haram insurgents from the Nigerian town of Dikwa, and footage of the operation was aired by Chad TV yesterday evening, which you'll see in this next report.
The war against Boko Haram is still on, and according to Chadian authorities, the troops are determined more than ever to bring the group to its knees. The troops from neighboring Chad are driving deep into Nigerian territory in an offensive aimed at helping end a 6-year insurgency that has killed thousands and now sucking in neighboring armies. Colonel Azem Bermandua, a Chad army spokesman, said more than 100 of the militants died in the battle for Dikwa, a town at a major crossroad some 80 kilometers east of Maiduguri, the capital of Nigeria's southeastern Borno state. Bermandua said Chadian troops chased the remaining fighters about 15 kilometers out of the town, where many walls are now sprayed with bullets and most houses lie deserted. In this part of Nigeria, until now, Boko Haram's heartland, residents have learned to flee the Sunni militants' bid to carve out an Islamic caliphate. But the tide finally appears to be turning against them as Chad has lent its support to Nigeria in the regional push against the group. Chad's victory at Dikwa is one that Nigeria would have liked to call its own. Its army chief previously said his soldiers listed Dikwa as a town that troops wanted to recapture before elections, due to have been held in February, but pushed back to March due to insecurity. Chadian forces had planned to take the town last month, but were ordered back by Nigeria, which said it planned to attack it. But a Chadian soldier in Dikwa said the closest Nigerian soldier got to the town during Monday's fighting was 50 kilometers away. Chad's army, considered one of the best in the region and backed by a strong air force, first deployed to help Cameroon fend off Boko Haram and is now pressing southwest into Nigerian territory after capturing the border town of Gambaru last month. According to Ryan Cummins, Chief Africa Analyst at Crisis Management Group Red 24, that victory starved Boko Haram militants of supplies. But despite these recent setbacks, Boko Haram has proven it is still able to carry out isolated attacks. 2 security forces said Boko Haram attacked Kaiga on Lake Chad at the weekend. They arrived in canoes and burned houses, but it was not immediately possible to confirm a number of casualties.
Now, on Tuesday's edition of the program, you will recall that we spoke to a clinical psychologist concerning the mindset of people living in crisis-hit areas, specifically in northeastern Nigeria. He did caution that we guard against being paranoid and treating people around us as suspects, which leads us to this next story. Now, according to police and family of a woman who was beaten to death in northern Nigeria on suspicion of being a suicide bomber, she was in fact mentally ill and not involved in terrorism. 33-year-old Tabitha Haruna was attacked by a mob on Sunday after she refused to be screened at a marketplace in Bauchi. Police are investigating the attack and have yet to make any arrests. Boko Haram militants based in northern Nigeria have been using women to carry out suicide bombings, which was why she was a suspect to begin with. The militants want to impose a strict version of Islam and have declared a caliphate in the territory under their control, even though some of those territories have been retaken. Now, Ms. Haruna was set upon by a mob last Sunday after she refused to be searched by vigilantes at the entrance to a marketplace. Now, away from Nigeria, more than ever, Libya is in need of help. The country, which has been relatively unstable since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi, is under huge threats from the Islamic State militants who have vowed to stop at nothing to strengthen their presence in the country, and the urgency of the request by the country for international help is also necessary in order to tackle extremism. Now, the UN Special Envoy briefed the United Nations Security Council on the situation in Libya, where two rival governments and the armed forces are battling for control 4 years after the civil war that ousted Muammar Gaddafi. Islamist militants have bolstered their foothold in the North African state amid the chaos, and on Tuesday stormed two oil fields, driving out security forces.
I also have no doubt that terrorist groups such as Islamic State will stop at nothing in their bid to play on existing political divisions and sense of mutual mistrust between the main political stakeholders in order to consolidate their own presence and influence in Libya. The overall situation on the ground is deteriorating rapidly, and Libya can no longer afford to allow the political crisis and armed conflict that has gripped the country for much of the past year cannot to fester longer. Unless Libya's leaders act quickly and decisively, the risk of their country's national unity and territorial integrity are real and imminent.
Now, speaking of Libya, a security official has just confirmed that warplanes from the country's internationally recognized government have carried out airstrikes on a Tripoli airport just hours before the United Nations-backed peace talks were due to start in Morocco. The jets hit an open area near the runway at Meitiga Airport, but caused no major damage, and the airport was operating normally. Now, the government did not immediately confirm that attack, and Libya has two rival governments with armed forces battling for control. Delegates from the two factions are holding UN-backed peace talks in Morocco to try to resolve the crisis. We'll take a break now on Network Africa. When we come back, we're looking at environmental issues. There are floods both in Tanzania and Madagascar, and unfortunately, lives have been lost. We'll have details for you in a moment. Please stay with us.